Okay, good morning. We're doing Hilchos Notein Taam Lifgam. The truth is, we already did this a couple times here and there, and this is the siman. It's going to be a little bit of a review, a little bit of new. Here we go. The poskim even say when you learn this siman, the shach says, "Look at what I wrote in Kuf Gimel, for example." So, okay, siman Kuf Chaf Bet Seif Aleph. Aleph is notein ta'am lifgam is mutter. So this we learned before. A bad flavor, something that's putrid, it makes it taste worse. That doesn't make the food that you're eating aser. Okay, at least on a level of deraisa. So let's keep reading. Bet kadera she'ena bat yoma. You have a pot, and it hasn't been used in 24 hours. So we hold this means a full 24 hours. It's going to be relevant again to remember famous machloket. The opinion of Rashi and Rabbeinu Taam, which is not lahalacha, is that all you need is all night. Linat laila, and that turns it into an eina ben yomo. Exactly what that is. So many poskim say that means, since we're not sure, it means basically our 12 hours of Shalot Maniot from Shkia to Nates. And then you're safe, according to the opinion of the Rashi and Rabbeinu Taam, that's already Ta'am Lifgam, even though it's only been, let's say, 12 hours and not 24. We hold it's definitely a full 24 hours. Tahainu, Sheshata me'eit le'eit. It must be a complete 24 hours. Mishinit bashal baha iser. Once you cooked it, it became nivla with iser. Now you have to wait 24 hours for it to be considered notein Ta'am Lifgam. And then havia nati Ta'am Lifgam. V'afilu hachi. Even after, right, on a level of daraisa, it's not going to be a problem. Right, the clay midyan that we took and we wanted to cook with it, we had to kasher it because it was within 24 hours. If it was more than 24 hours, I don't think Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who was gozer. I'm not sure when it happened. But asru chachamim levashal ba'lechatchila. Once it's 24 hours, it's asr to cook with it lechatchila. Gzeira, Chazal made a gzeira, atu bat yoma, because of a bat yoma. If we let you use Keilim that have been used longer than 24 hours, and we say, sure, no problem, use it lechatchila, you're going to end up using Keilim that have not been used within 24 hours. And then Taam ke'ikar, you could be over in Yisuri deraita, and metam tim haled. So gzeira atu bat yoma, bein shebelua me'isr uva lavashal ba heter. This principle applies whether the Keilim have iser, mamish treif, inside the walls, or bein shevalua mechalav uba levashel basar or ibcha, or really it's heter beheter. It's already it's balua with meat or milk, and now you want to cook with it the opposite. So it's the same halacha that you need 24 hours, and then it's no longer a problem on a level of daraisa, but on a darabanan, there is really no difference lechatchila. Of course, it makes a difference b'diavad. Fine. Let's read Gimel, I think. I'll just point out over here. On my version, I have the Erech Lechem. He quotes over here that the Radabaz says by Kli Cheres, it's aser to use them, whether it's hot, either for hot or cold, once it was baluabo, and you have to sell it to a goy. It's probably not a chiddush for us. Just there is a case, we had it earlier, where sometimes in a case where it's there's nothing you can do about it, chazal were mekel. But l'maisa, when it comes to dishes, even there's no way to kana, there's no way to kasher it. Kli cheres, there's no way to kasher it. There's nothing you can do. You have to sell it to a non-Jew. So I mean, the Gilyon Maharsha has a few interesting comments. He mentions that issue as well. That he also points out, though, if a klicheres has in it an isser balua of an isser derabanan, it's only isser derabanan to eat this food, and it's balua in a klicheres. Right, and it's porous, it's not even glazed, and there's hefsid merubaba here. In such a case, he says one can be mekel. He also mentions, we're going to get to this shortly, that if 12 months go by and a dish has not been used, so then we say all of the moisture is completely evaporated, Chazal say, but they only say it by wine. The example that's given is if you have a dish that had wine in there with cold wine, and it was stored in there, and then it's emptied of the wine, and that dish hasn't been used in 12 months. So then it's mutter. We say even then it's any moisture, any isser balua gets completely dried out and basically disappears for halachic purposes. And okay, so. Why do I mention that? I'll keep going. Right. I'm going to mention this in a moment, but also another little principle he points out, whenever we say hefsid maruba, and this is the Maharsha, every case lagufo, but whatever, when it comes to, he just writes that when we say hefsid maruba, it has to be, each dish is expensive. If it's really cheap pottery, we don't say, oh, you're going to throw out the dishes. I mean, again, it might make a difference, how many, every situation, a different posek might have a different opinion. You might be talking about an entire hotel, but whatever it is. But his point is that each dish has to be important. It has to be chashuv. You don't say, oh, I'm going to lose 8 dishes. And you put the price of 8 dishes together, and now it becomes a hefsed maruba. Okay, why do I just point this out? Is because it happens many times, or happens sometimes, a person ends up with china or expensive dishes, and it became treif, either by accident in your house, or you got it from somebody else, you inherited it. What do? Do you have to throw it away or not? So I'll just reference Psakim Mechuvos or Kafachayim in Sadi Gimel Tedvav, Igros Moshe, in Yoreh Aleph, Mem Gimel, or Chele Gimel Kav Zayin, where it's in Yoreh Igros Moshe. And anyways, basically, there are poskim, there are cases where they are, we see here in the Nosei Keilim on our page, but there are cases, I'll just list the best way scenario. I have about 7 best way scenarios, but you don't necessarily need all 7 to be Meko on a B'diavad case. Don't go and buy treif china, but if you have it, so number 1, our china nowadays, whatever, fine porcelain, whatever it is very, very smooth. It's glazed. It might have a din of glass. That's one tzad leheter. Usually, Keilim that we're talking about are on a level of a klisheni. So that's another tzad that makes it more meko. Many of the poskim, they'll say, wait 12 months. And we know it works by wine. It's just unclear. Lamaisa, I think the Chacham Tzvi is quoted as saying it works by chametz on Pesach. But basically, all the poskim say this 12-month thing is it's only a kula for wine, but as a snif, as a package deal with a shaila, when you have these numerous factors, then they include it as one of their factors. It's a kli that you have no choice, like we mentioned. Pottery, there's no way to kasher it. So that's another reason why I have some meruba. If you know it was only nivla by an Isser Derabanan, Samar Mekel, so that makes it more cool. But they say you should do Hagala 3 times. And then in such a case, many of the poskim are Mekel, but I would just say do a Shelat Shalom on your specific case. A Shelat Rav, I mean.
So wait a year and then do Hagala 3 times.
Yeah, and then many poskim will say it's okay. But ask your Rav. And every case the gufo, but as a general rule, that is a common psak. Okay. If a person did it on purpose, used a kli that he wasn't supposed to within 24 hours, then it's a machlokas. What do you do? Anyways, let's get to Gimel. Let's do Gimel. We didn't do it yet, right? Yesh omrim. Daha de chashiva peguma. Now, when we say it's a peguma kashe'ena bat yoma. When do we say a kli is it's pagum, and it's not when it's not a ben yoma, and therefore it's b'diavad, it's not going to aser your food. Davka shehakadera hudchu yafe v'sarim menu kol shamnunit eser hadavukba. That's obviously we're talking about you cleaned your kli. You can't use dirty dishes because the little bit of food that's stuck to it, we don't say it's a pagum. Only what's in the walls becomes pagum after 24 hours. But if you didn't wash the kli, it's filthy. Or you see pieces of dirt stuck to it. Often you'll see this in a microwave. And you see the food there all over. You don't say it's, after 24 hours, all this little crusted food now becomes mutter. No. Haga, then it's aser, and then it has to mamash be batal b'shishim.
Is he saying Allah is only by a blia?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what he's saying. Only by blia do we say noting tam. Thanks, Ruben. Okay, only by blia we say noting tam Lifgam after 24 hours.
But if it was left dirty and then you were to wash it, the clock still goes backwards to
Yeah. Even if you have a dirty pot, thanks for Gershon. Even if you had the pot is dirty and now you clean it, but you haven't used that pot in 24 hours, it's still, so then that's 24 hours because it goes by when you last cooked with it. Now, we'll jump the gun a little bit. We're going to remind ourselves an important halacha. Let's say you have a pot. We're going to get to it. It's in the shach, but so I'll say it here in the next seif. If you have a pot and you cooked with it, and it's been 24 hours, so that's 24 hours Taam Lifgam. But let's say within that 24 hours, while that clock is ticking, after let's say 12 hours, you cooked something else in there, parv, something kosher, parv, in between. Does that restart the clock or not? So according to the Shulchan Aruch, it restarts the clock by basar b'chalav, and according to the Ramah, it restarts the clock even by shari yisurin, because the Ramah is a little more, this is lechatchila, not b'diavad. The Ramah is machmer lechatchila, not b'diavad. Another, don't cook with it, but it could be behefsin maruba yesh lahakal. But the reason is because when you recook with it, he holds chanan by shari surim. So now that water that it got cooked with reignited it basically. The water became chanan and it went back in there, and now you have to start the whole clock all over again. Okay. So let's finish reading the Haggah. We finished that, no? Haggah. Mikol makom. Im yesh shishim. Rak neged adavak bekadera hakol shari. But even if you had some amashas there, we said that, but it's batal b'shishim, then it's okay. Kavar ki hakol shari damasha bekadera kavar pagum, because whatever is inside the pot itself, in the walls, that's pagum. And vein tzarich bittul, and you don't need bittul on what's in the walls. Yesh omrim de bidvarim charifim, lo amrinan din notin tam Lifgam. And this we learned before, that the Ramah, not the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah is machmer, that if you're cooking now with the davar charif, it pulls back even what was done even from before 24 hours. It takes the Taam Lifgam inside the walls, the belia, and now it remakes it to a fresh taste, turns it into the charifus turns it into a Taam lishvach.
Does the Ramah have a timeline when it works?
No, there's no timeline. As long as the kli hasn't been kasher, that's basically a timeline. There's no timeline. It's always, if it's davar charif, it's always going to go back and
12 months, a year, 10 years?
Yeah, but as the shach, it doesn't matter. But the shach points out, this is on the new food that's a davar charif, that it pulls out the Taam Lifgam. Let's say, and turns it into shvach. If you cooked spicy food in a pot, and then you left that spicy treif, you left it there for 24 hours, and now you cook something that's not spicy, then that's okay. Because the charifus is, the davar charif that turns it to shvach is only what you're cooking right now, pulls out of the walls. But if there's spicy in the walls, that stays in the walls. It's after 24 hours, that turns lifgam, and it stays there, and nothing can pull it out unless you're cooking with a davar charif. If you want, we can talk about it, but that's okay. The Shach speaks it out. You can. I think it's intuitive, but I guess a lot of things could be intuitive in either direction. It just depends what the halacha is. But that's okay. I think that's enough. It's an interesting Shach's ifbet. A couple different scenarios, but the principle we said. Lachain, im bishol bekaderet iser she'ena bat yoma. So now, if you cook with a pot that's not ben yomo, machal charif, and now you're cooking with a new davar charif, to go on tafshel sharuba chometz or tavlin or shardvarim charifin aser. But it has to not just you put some spices in the food. It has to be a really spicy dish, or just maybe just raw onions or vinegar, pepper. I don't know, spicy hot peppers. Aval. But if you add a little spice to make your food taste good, that's not called davar charif. Again, we learned this before. And this is the halacha. Aval. Davar charif. And if you had an isser, I guess it's in the Rama. If it's in the davar charif, and then you wait 24 hours, ubishlu baheter, and then you cooked in there something she'eno charif, it's mutter. The eina charifat rishon mashvele l'shvach. We just said that. Sorry. Anyways, the Shach has a couple interesting scenarios. You can look into it.
If you cooked ben yomo, and then you cook something which is not tarif, and then you cook something which is tarif.
So again, say that again out loud. Right. So you have a kli that you had isser, and then you waited 24 hours.
24 hours, and then you cook something which is not tarif.
Then you cook something which is not charif, so that's kosher. And then you cook charif afterwards. Yeah. So then this is part of the shach. So then you cook charif, whatever is cooked charif later on, we'll pull it out.
And the thing right before it was mutter.
Right before it was mutter. And then you can wash the dish and cook in another minute. Again, all these cases are b'diavad because you have to kasher the dish. But the next minute, you can now cook parva, whatever, not charif, and then it's mutter. The davar charif doesn't wake up what was done, 3 days ago. Only while it's being cooked itself. That's the main point of that shach. The davar charif only is mashvi l'shvach while it's cooking. Once you empty the davar charif, it goes back to, it's an eino ben yomo from when you had the isser that was nivla inside. Just to quickly point out, since we're close to Pesach, and this is very much related, but it's more from in Orach Chaim, Taf Mem Zayin, but it's related to here, Notein Taam Lifgam. So what about chametz? So everyone holds, if it's Taam Lifgam before Pesach, it's not a problem, right? That's why we always want to kasher your dishes and take care of all your issues before Pesach begins. But what about during Pesach? So the question, so machlokas rishonim, how do we look at notein taam lifgam? It's pretty yesodas, pretty foundational as it relates to our sugya. The Rashba in general says we look at it as batel barov. Maybe on a level of darabanan, but that's how we look at it, batel barov. And since chametz is aser b'mashahu, so according to the Rashba, and that's how the Rama paskins lachatchila, that if you have chametz and it becomes ta'am lifgam during Pesach, let's say you cooked with a pot with chametz, and then you wait 24 hours, right? Because Pesach is 7 days long or 8 days. So therefore, it becomes ta'am lifgam in the middle of Pesach. If that's the case, it's still aser to use that pot. We say that chametz is aser b'mashahu. However, the Ran says once it's ta'am lifgam of waiting 24 hours, it has a din of basically something that's like a nevela that becomes not edible anymore. Basically, something that's completely not edible. We don't look at it as batel barov. We look at it as something that's inedible, and something that's inedible is not aser. It's not. It doesn't.
That's netra.
She'ena ra'uya. What was that?
That becomes netra achar zmano is also.
But doesn't.
Don't
It's
make
not
it
an Isser
before,
Beluah.
only before Pesach, that it's mutter.
No, you can still say so it's before.
Yeah, but on the Beluah of the Keilim, there's no. I don't think we don't. There's no Isser Darabanan of that. You mean
So why are you bringing the Ran in to discuss it?
the point is why? Because if it's on Pesach and it becomes notein Taam Lifgam, you're allowed to use, and you use that kli by mistake, you're allowed to eat that food. That's the psak of the Ran and the Shulchan Aruch. And the Aruch HaShulchan says for a poor person, the hefsed meruba, you can.
If you cooked it before, if you cooked something in a chametz pot before Pesach, you can eat it on Pesach. If you cooked it
That's not
on Pesach, you wouldn't be able to eat it.
If it's Eino Ben Yomo,
Even if it's in.
right, so you're quoting the Ramah, and that's why you know the halacha. The Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to, and the Aruch HaShulchan says,
Yes, it's okay.
what? The whole case is Bediavad. The whole case is Bediavad.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to use that kli.
All right, so you used the word allowed.
You're allowed to eat it. No one says you're allowed to use a kli that hasn't been kasher. But if it was cooked there by mistake, if it's an Eino Ben Yomo, so according to the Shulchan Aruch, you can, and according to the Ramah, you can't. Well, if you want, we can look it up again afterwards. Taf Mem Zayin. Okay, we're on Dalet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Dalet. Kedera habalua mi basar bechalav. Okay, now you have a pot that's balua with meat and milk. Im kodem right, so it became isser. It's not you want to move it from one to another. It's an isser basar bechalav together, and we say chanan. So here's where it comes up. What we mentioned. Kodem kedera balua mi basar bechalav. Im kodem she'avar layla echad chamamu ba mayim. Now you have this pot became treif from basar bechalav. And it hasn't been 24 hours, it hasn't been overnight. You cook water in there. Chashiv ki'ilu chazer v'nitbashal ba'eser. Now the water recooks everything, and it rejuvenates the basar b'chalav, and the water became iser for the first. Umonin me'et le'et misha'a shehu chamu mayim. So now we start from scratch. The time starts all over again. Masha ein kain. B'shari Surim. B'shari Surim, the clock doesn't restart, but as we mentioned, that the Ramah in Kuf Gimel is machmer, except the Makom Hefsed. Okay.
And you say the law doesn't agree to this. You said earlier, is that right?
I'm not sure which part.
Part.
Well, that's what he's saying. By Shari Surim, he says, yet you restart the clock. The Shulchan Aruch says you don't restart the clock for Shari Surim. The Ramah says you do. That's in Kuf. That's what the Haggah says. Haggah says, look at Kuf Gimel, and that's where he says that. Okay, Seif, hey. Okay, last one. Esr mu'at shenivla b'kli shedarku shelo lishtamish bo beheter mu'at b'chdei sheitein zet. Wait a second. If you see in a kli, only a little bit of Isser gets nivla inside. You saw that what happened. Right? If you see what happens, and you see it's only a small amount of Isser, and it's going to easily become Batel B'Shishi. That's the case. Not that if it's, you don't know, then you have to worry that the whole pot got used for Isser. We're talking about you saw an Isser Mu'at Shenivla Bakli. Shedar Kol Shelo Yishtam Shel Beheter Mu'at. And normally, it's a huge pot. You're not going to cook, a few millimeters of water. Or a tiny little one piece of chicken soup, you're not going to make one little few ounces. You're going to fill a pot. So it's always, the Isser, you know that the little bit of Isser that got in that pot in this situation is always going to be Batel B'Shishi. So that's the case. It is a Ben Yomo. We're talking about a Ben Yomo. Okay. B'chdei shitein batam beheter shisham shebo kamo kedera gedola v'chavit uchayotze bahen. Harei mutter. Lishtamish bo lechatchila. So the Shulchan Aruch says you can use it lechatchila, afal pishuhu ben yomo, even though it's a ben yomo. We don't. There's the principle of gezerah of emavatli neser lechatchila doesn't apply to something that you can't see, that you can't feel. It's balua. It's not be'en. We don't apply that. So therefore, he says lechatchila you're allowed to. The fishi efshar lavo lidei netinas tam. It's not going to come to netinas tam. Aval Now, just to point out that the Aruch Shulchan, Shach, the Taz, they all argue on this. We saw this earlier in Sadi Tet, I think. That's where they argue on this Shulchan Aruch. They say, don't do it. It's dangerous. So don't do this. Aval imu kli shemishtamshim bo. But they do agree. Everyone agrees that if it's a Taam Pagam, an Isser Muat, that's Taam Pagam, or it's 24 hours went by, then that's in the Berhetev and Aruch HaShulchan, that it's okay. Okay. Aval imu kli shemishtamshim bo b'davar muat kamo ke'ara achayot tzeva aser lishtamish bo she'em mevat leinis al-chatchila afilo Isser Muat afilo Isser Habalua. But otherwise, if it's not a small little amount, then for sure, it's always going to be Aser, and Kasher the pot first, and stop.